In some instances, the left and the right kind of meet over food. And I mean, there's some issues, local food being one of them, raw milk sometimes can be one of them, even like legalizing hemp, industrial hemp is one of them. There's these certain, what are there issues that you've found, maybe food waste, I don't know how many of you caught the discussion before, maybe food waste, can you name a couple other issues that you found are particularly easy to find common ground between, across the aisle, even during a time when that is harder to do?
Well, I co-sponsor, or I'm the prime sponsor of two bills with Representative Massey, who is a very socially conservative, very conservative Republican, but a little bit of a libertarian. One is around taking raw milk across a state line.
Does he have a farm? No, but he's in rural Kentucky.
Yes,
yeah.
He has a sort of a family sustainability kind of farm. Okay. And the other is about making more availability of slaughterhouses, which is a big problem because part of the challenge of the growth in small farms and medium-sized farms is we've lost a lot of our infrastructure over the last 50 years as we've consolidated farms and everything's grown in a big feedlot or a big CAFO and goes to a feedlot and then goes to a big slaughterhouse somewhere that's centralized. Well, now we're trying to get back to this idea that there will be small slaughterhouses and you could buy something that was locally grown, but also the farmer can afford to have a slaughter.
Right, so you have the infrastructure to do that.
So the point is he and I are co-sponsors of those, and it comes from much more of a libertarian side. This used to be Ron Paul's bill. It's sort of like nobody's going to tell me how to drink my milk. And I come from one of those states, Maine, where not only do we have a lot of people who have been working in organic farming for a long time, but we have what's called the food sovereignty movement. So many municipalities in our state have actually passed laws at their town meeting, because we still have town meeting form of government, that basically say, no one can tell us in this town how to regulate our food. That's a little harder to stand up in court, but it's a way of emphasizing, if you want to make some jam in your kitchen and then sell it on a table in front of your house, you shouldn't be hauled to jail for doing that. And it's a kind of way of looking at this that doesn't always go well with the people who come from big farming states or represent farming food processors.
It totally does not go along party lines at all.
Absolutely not. So that's one area. Another I would say is that some of the big, more conservative policy think tanks like the Cato or others have been opposed to farm subsidies. So you'll get Ron Kind, a Democrat from Wisconsin, supporting amendments on the floor that say, well, if you receive a subsidy through the Farm Bill of, for your corn or wheat crop, you should have a cap on what your farm income is. This should be kind of like a means testing. Well, he'll get support from people on the other side where the Cato Institute will say, well, there should be no government intervention in farming. It should be all free market. And so that's another kind of interesting parallel. And then just really there's a lot of middle-of-the-road stuff. I was on the committee with a representative from Nebraska who was supporting some local food provisions and more enhancement of farmers markets and things like that. And he said, I have a district in Nebraska that raises more beef than anywhere else in the country, but I also know that many of the farmers I represent are putting in a couple of acres of tomatoes, heirloom tomatoes maybe, that they're selling to local restaurants, and they're making some good money on that. So there's been an evolution of where do farmers make money. I mean, I think at a lot of places you'd find more and more farmers that would want to convert to organic if the transition wasn't so complicated or expensive, or they had some reassurance in the market. And that's a real opportunity because you'll probably hear from some of the food processors and retailers, there's a great shortage of supply.
Yeah.
And that is increasingly, a lot of this is no longer being driven by, environmental concerns or health concerns or ideology. It's now, there is an enormous market out there, about $40 billion, and all the growth right now in retailing is in organically grown,
that's the
sustainable
fastest growing
foods.
by far in the entire,